again, and welcome back to Phillies Extra, the baseball podcast from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber, and I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball. And because this is the time of year to stop and give thanks, I'd like to say something right off the top to everybody out there within the sound of my voice. Thank you all very much for finding us, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or watching on Inquirer.com, the Inquirer's YouTube channel, Facebook, X, or Instagram. Thank you for being there and spending some time with us. I really do appreciate it. We started this podcast back in February, and this is our 40th episode, a nice little milestone for us. We've had a different guest almost every week, and I couldn't be more proud of our lineup. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Aaron Nola, Andrew Painter, John Middleton, Mike Schmidt, Don Mattingly, Billy Wagner, and many, many more. And I'm excited this week to welcome back our third repeat guest, Phillies Director of Player Development, Luke Murton. Luke joined us back in April when the minor league season was just getting underway. And although he and I were in touch about various topics throughout the season, I'm looking forward to having him back in this forum to reflect on the season and look ahead to next year, kind of a state of the Phillies farm system, if you will, as he enters his second full season in charge. First, though, if I might, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Phillies farm director because most fans aren't as familiar with him as they are with, say, Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson, or even some other team officials. Luke Murton is 39 years old, and 2026 will be his fourth year in the Phillies organization. He played in the minors for 5 years with the Yankees, getting to AAA in 2013 as primarily a right-handed hitting first baseman. His best year came in AA when he hit 25 homers for Trenton. Since his playing career ended, he's done a little bit of everything. He coached at Samford University in Alabama and in the Red Sox farm system. He scouted for the Giants and Padres. The Phillies hired him in 2022 to lead their minor league hitting department. And when Preston Mattingly was promoted to general manager after the 2024 season, Murton took over as minor league director. And the farm system he now oversees still ranks probably in the bottom half of the league. Baseball America, no less than the authority on the minor leagues, had the Phillies at 19th in their late season rankings. MLB.com ranked them 21st. It's a largely top-heavy system with Andrew Painter, Aidan Miller, and Justin Crawford firmly in the top 100 prospects in baseball. But after that, it drops off the table, according to most evaluators. It didn't help that the Phillies traded teenage shortstop Starlin Caba and catcher Eduardo Tait, both of whom are still years away from the majors, but are top 100 prospects in the Jesus Luzardo and Joan Duran trades. McAble also got traded for Duran, which thinned the upper-level pitching ranks. Arun Escobar looks like a promising hitter. One scout from another team told me he compares him to the Astros' Isaac Paredes. But there are some questions about whether Escobar can stay at second base. Center fielder Dante Nori had a really nice season, although some scouts wonder if he's more than a fourth outfielder at the major league level. There's a sense that right-hander Gage Wood, the Phillies' first-round draft pick this year, could move quickly through the system. And beyond that, it drops off even further. But it's shaping up to be an important year down on the farm, with Crawford and Painter set to graduate to the majors and Miller right on their heels. It'll be essential for some other prospects to take a step forward in their development. And that's what we want to talk about in our conversation with Murton. After that, I'll open my reporter's notebook and talk about a trade last week that caught my eye and could have implications for the Phillies. And as always, we'll take a listener question at the end. Let's get right to it then. Here's my sit down with Phillies farm director Luke Murton. Luke Murton, welcome back to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So we started this podcast back in February, and I mentioned in the intro that you're only our third repeat guest, along with Preston Mattingly and Kevin Long. So I think we need to get you guys jackets or hats or some kind of swag for being in the Two-Timers Club.
Well, hopefully I can be in the Three-Timers Club to beat those two, but, I'm happy to be here, excited about it.
Oh, don't worry. You'll be joining the Three-Timers Club.
Just as long as I'm third before them, I'll be happy.
There you go. You were here in April, so it's been a while. And, a few weeks after the minor league season began, and at that time, I was asking you, what factors went into having Justin Crawford open in AAA. And what Andrew Painter's timeline was for getting back on the mound and stuff like that. And here we are now, 7 months later, I guess, and the entire season is behind us. And I'll sort of start out with kind of a broad question, and you can take it wherever you like. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you from your first year as director of player development? Was there something you came out of the season with, a specific takeaway, maybe on the state of the system, a strength, a weakness, surprises, disappointments that you're kind of focused on addressing as you move into year 2?
Yeah, I think everything you do, right? Like, I think you assess, hey, how'd the year go? How can we get better? It's funny that today we just talked to our high performance or players over in high performance camp. They're down here for a 5-week camp, and one of the comments I made to them was like, hey, we're going to send you a survey because at the end of the day, like, what we want to do is we're here to serve you. We're here to do the best we can for you guys and help you reach your dreams and your goals and help the organization, ask for their feedback on how we can make the camp better. So I think like you're always reflecting on, hey, what can we do better? Where do we do well? Where do we excel? Where do we improve? I think like, as an organization, I think really it's a little bit of a cliche answer, but it's also the truth. It's like, I think we can continue to get better in every facet of the game. I think we can get better pitching, hitting, defense, outfield, infield, base running, strength conditioning, every department I feel like we can get better in. I think it's like anything. Like every player wants the guy that hits 300 wants to hit 310. The guy that hits 310 wants to hit 320. I think the same thing on this side of the game is, hey, where can we get better? And I think like the pitching department, like this time of the offseason now is like we're heading to the dead period, which is a cool time for a lot of people. It's like it's a little bit slower for those because the players aren't there, so it gives them a little bit more creativity of time and gives them more time, to use their creativity and figure out, hey, how can we build this and how can we continue to improve? I think the biggest thing is like looking at this year for our system is, I think one of the biggest things is that you want to win at every level, but I think also you want the players that you think are talented and players that you think are going to impact the big leagues to perform well. And, this year, those players did a pretty good job of setting themselves up for this coming season.
So one of the storylines that I think carried through the season was when Justin Crawford would get called up, right? Of course, you guys decided to keep him in AAA where he was able to play every day, which I think is an opportunity that he might not have had in the big leagues, especially after the deadline and you guys getting Harrison Bader. But given how well he played and the needs in the outfield at various times during the season, and the fact that, like, it appears Justin will be part of the Major League club in 2026, I wonder if there was a point when maybe it got really close and you thought you might have to get to that moment with Justin where every farm director loves, right, where you get to call him in the office and tell him that he's going up. I mean, I wonder whether there was any point where, it got close to maybe having to do that.
Yeah, I think anytime a player performs the way Justin performed, I think that's always, the conversation will always happen. I mean, like when you got a guy that's hitting 330 in AAA and is athletic and he can play center field and do all these things, I think at the end of the day, like, yes, that's always a conversation of should we bring Justin up? When should we bring Justin up? The one thing is like good for us is our Major League club is very, very good. Not the best thing for some prospects. I think if you look at a lot of other organizations, Justin would have probably been in the big league at some point this year because of how well he performed. I do think like his maturation in the minor leagues and a full season in AAA will help him heading into this year. So yeah, I mean, I think at different points of the year is obviously closer than others. He's a talented player who we believe is major league ready, and I think he could have been ready for a lot of teams last year. I think just given where we were at, where he was at, just probably wasn't the best at the time. So I think him more than anybody is looking forward to the 2026 and the opportunity I think he's going to have in front of him.
Yeah, I wonder how much the debate internally with him now is center field versus left field. And I know you and I talked throughout the course of the year, and you were pretty clear. Like, I think Justin Crawford can be our center fielder. Is that still the feeling, do you think? And how much debate, kind of healthy debate, goes on about, hey, where can we maximize Justin's impact defensively?
Yeah, I think players can maximize any organizational impact. Where can you have players in the best spots? I think Justin's more than capable of playing center field. I think we see him, we view him internally as a center fielder. You never know how the offseason ever goes, but I think right now he's geared to center field. And that's where he's going to play, and that's where he's going to be with us for a very long time.
If I could quickly follow up too. So there was a stat that caught my eye from a story on Fangraphs a few weeks ago that over the last 4 seasons from 22 to 25, the Phillies had 24 players make their major league debut. And that's the third fewest in baseball behind the Yankees and the Braves. And 12 of those came in 2022. So it's 12 players in the last 3 years. And I know that's going to change in 26. I think everyone expects Justin and Andy Painter to graduate and get to the big leagues, and maybe others will follow them. But, seeing those numbers kind of got me wondering, like, has there been an organizational lean maybe toward being a little more conservative on how fast we move guys from AAA to the big leagues? Or is it more a snapshot in time, right, of the state of the big league roster, and that over the last few years, with a few exceptions like Yohan Rojas in 23 and Otto Kemp this year, there hasn't been much opportunity for guys to come up from AAA and contribute? Is that sort of a reason for, seeing that number?
Yeah, I think if you look at the three teams you mentioned, the Yankees, the Braves, and us, it's like I think in the last 3 years, besides this year with the Braves, every team's been in the playoffs every single year. I think a lot of times what happens is when you have a very good major league team, it's harder for players to go up. I remember years ago when I was working for the Giants, one of the scouts had mentioned, a lot of scouts would look at how many big leaguers they have to, how good of a scout they are. And he's like, hey, I've worked for the San Francisco Giants, and we've won 3 World Series in the last 6 years. I'm going to have less big leaguers than another organization. Right. That's, not winning as many games in the major league level because certain players are getting less opportunity. So I think it's more of like our major league teams have been very good. So it's hard for players to go up. And I do think we're at a point now where our major league teams will be very good again next year. But we do have some prospects that are kind of, been at that AAA level, touched the AAA level, been there all year that, will probably be more likely to be impactful for us here in the big leagues in the future.
So Andrew Painter was on the show in September, and when I visited with him, we talked about how this would be his first normal, healthy offseason since 22-23. Looking back on the year, how much do you emphasize the 26 starts, the 118 innings, no setbacks from a health standpoint, finishing the season, and trust that, the other things, the command, that'll get sharper as he gets further away from Tommy John? And what does his offseason look like in terms of his ramp up for spring training, just being able to get through the year healthy and go into a normal offseason?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think he did a tremendous job this year. I think we had expectations on him. I think the industry had expectations on him. Honestly, some of these expectations we put on players is unfair. I think a guy that's just coming back from Tommy John that, pitched over 100 innings, was healthy, and at a level he'd never been without, like you said, an offseason to where he could really progress and do what he wanted to do. So, I mean, I was very pleased, very satisfied with where he's at. You hear a lot of statistics of, what guys do their first year out of Tommy John and how much better the second year goes. So at the end of the day, I think, Andy's a very, very talented kid who's a great kid. I think he accomplished a ton this year. I think next year he's looking forward to accomplishing more. I think he's down in Florida at home, and he's working. I know he goes in and out of Cressy, spends a lot of time there, which they've done a great job with him over the years. So he's down there. He popped in here to the high performance camp the other day. But he looks great. He's healthy. He's ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I talked during the year about some big league guys who had surgery right around the same time. And look, Sandy Alcantara, right, Cy Young winner, and he struggled in the first half until he kind of got his feet on the ground. So, you take Andy coming off 2 lost seasons and the injury, and then also being in AAA for the first time in his career, right? I guess that probably accounts for a lot of what you saw on the mound in terms of some of the inconsistency.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, like you said, not easy coming out from Tommy John. He's at a level he's never been at. He's pitched in a long time, and it's still a very young, talented player that, is still learning himself. You look at a guy like, Alcantara, you mentioned, obviously he knows himself better than Andy knows himself at the stage of the career they're at. So again, looking forward to, I thought he accomplished a ton. And if you ask me, hey, are you pleased with his year? Very pleased with his year, and looking forward to seeing him in 2026.
There was a lot to like about Aidan Miller's season. I saw him at the end of the year in Lehigh, and we talked a little bit about what he did at the plate after the All-Star break. He hit, I think, 356, right, with almost an 1,100 OPS. And you and I talked about the stolen bases, and I love the story about spring training and not really sure he can steal 50 bases. And then you look up 2 months into the season, and he's got almost 30 already. I kind of wonder, you don't have to – I don't think you have to work in player development to see that he's coming fast. 2 things for you on him. Number one, was there kind of an adjustment at the plate after a couple of months of the season that kind of accounted for what we saw in the second half? Or, as a young player, one of the younger players in each league he's played in, did he just kind of get his feet on the ground? That's number one.
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of both. I think if he went back and did it all over again, his first couple months there would be better, just because I think at the end of the day, like it did take him some time to get comfortable. And I do think like he did make some adjustments. The approach of the plate began to improve. It started to grow. You start facing better pitching, more consistent pitching. And it's like him at a young age at that level, definitely like had to get his feet wet, but also made some considerable, we go back and look at different dates of adjustments that were made and production that was done. But I do think it was a combination of both. And he grew a ton as a player. Like the cool thing is like from my seat is seeing these guys, like his first year, I saw how much he grew in certain aspects. The second year, he built on that and grew in different ways. And, what was cool to me is I got to see him in Double-A at the end, towards the end. And it was like, man, like he's like, you see him like kind of like growing up in front of you, which is cool. And then I got to see him at the end in Triple-A. And it was like that feeling of getting his feet wet at Double-A, did not see that in Triple-A. I think he got even more comfortable with who he is and, understands how talented and how productive he can be, and kind of just took it right into Triple-A right away, which is really cool to see. He didn't have that adjustment period like he had in Double-A.
So I think, on the outside, at least the question now is he hasn't played anywhere other than shortstop yet. He's played a really good shortstop. I understand why you'd want to leave him there. But, Trey Turner is pretty entrenched there right now. He had probably his best defensive year in a while. What's the plan, I guess, for getting Aidan some reps at other positions, maybe third base? Is that in the cards for him? And can you see him factoring into the mix, at the big league level in 2026?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, like we wanted to see – he wanted to prove that he can play shortstop. I think he's done that internally. I think he's done that to the industry. I think like where we're at now is, like you said, Trey Turner's a phenomenal shortstop, played great defensively, led the league in hitting. It's not hard. It's not easy to go replace that in the big leagues. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day, like I think Aidan, we've talked to Aidan about possibly doing some third and moving around the infield a little bit. And he's open to it. And again, like as far as him being in the mix this year, you never know. Like he's a very talented player. Don't want to put too much on him too soon. To me, it's like he'll be a big league spring training invite. You bring him in, and you see what we got. We see where the roster ends up throughout the year, and you never know. I don't want to rule anything out. Obviously, that's Dave and Preston kind of doing that. But I think from a talent standpoint, from a readiness standpoint, like you kind of said earlier, like the ones that are really good, they always are ready a little sooner than you think they are. So I think we'll see. I think at the end of the day is he might move around defensively a little bit to get somewhere off shortstop. He'll be in big league spring training and I'm sure like we are, he's looking for the opportunity to prove that, he's ready.
Could you see left field as a possibility? Like, is that something he could do to move out there?
I don't think you rule anything out of the possibility ever. Because I think at the end of the day, it's like, hey, how do we best service our major league team? And I think somebody like Aidan would be completely willing to go wherever he could to do that. But right now, I think it's more just, hey, moving around the infield, see if there's a spot there potentially ever in the future. And again, like I don't think outfield's out of the question, but not something that I think we've kicked around too much recently.
Yeah. Let's see if we can do like a little lightning round before we wrap things up. There are guys beyond the big three that I wanted to touch base with you on. And I'd like to start with Alex McFarland. He's a guy whose name came up this week because you guys added him to the 40-man roster. He finished the season in the bullpen. I wonder whether there was any difference in stuff. Maybe did the velocity even tick up a little bit? I know the command was sort of come and going a little bit here and there. Will he continue to develop as a reliever, and how do you see him, next year factoring in?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like if you from a talent standpoint, he's got a tremendous frame. He's got room to still continue to get better physically. He's one of the hardest workers we have. He's been at this camp before he's on the 40-man, and he's one of the first guys in there doing stretch. I'm finishing up my workout. He's getting in there early, before everybody gets in there working on mobility and stuff. So it's like impressive to see, first of all, like how hard he works and the physicality he has and the arm he has is tremendous. The one thing when we switched to the bullpen, he got to an innings limit to where it's like, hey, let's finish your innings out in the bullpen. Let's get a different look. Yes, stuff did uptick out of the bullpen. The one thing as a starter, sometimes, and this is like most guys, he'll be up to 98 early and it drops off a little bit. Now the bullpen, he's up to 100. Everything was a little sharper. Everything was a little tighter. I think heading into this year, it's like, we'll sit down with the player. And we're starting to get to that point in the offseason where the throwing program is starting to progress to more, hey, are we going to progress as a starter reliever? I think internally we'll continue to have conversations about it, talk to the player about it, and see where he and where we think is the best fit for him for helping again, on a major league team and the best for his development as well.
Gabriel Rincones Jr. also added to the 40-man roster. Much better second half than first. I think he had 10 homers after the break. Still really struggling against lefties. What's the big thing for him now moving forward in terms of continuing to grow at the AAA level and sort of what does he need to do to kind of work his way into the mix at the next level?
Yeah, he was right. He was very, very good at right-handed pitching. Like, so you look at his overall numbers, they look solid. When you really look at the numbers for his right-handed pitchers, they're actually really, really good. Which means the lefty numbers weren't great. So I think from a development standpoint, if you look at where he's at the end of the day, for him to help our major league team, it's to hit right-handed pitching. I don't think yet it's hit left-handed pitching. You also don't want to pigeonhole a young player to only hit right-handed pitching. But I think, the conversation we've had is, hey, your job's to demolish right-handed pitching. It's to get there. And the more you hit right-handed pitching, the more opportunities you'll get against left-handed pitching. And then we'll kind of solve that problem once we get there. Because what we don't want to do from talking to him, and it's like we don't want to spend so much time on left-handed pitching preparation that he loses, how well he's been against right-handed pitching. And really that's the key to get there. So it's a matter of, from our perspective is he wants to be, a superstar player. That's the mentality he has, like most guys. But I think we've, got to the point where it's like, hey, let's focus on the right-handed. Let's get you there. Let's get you performing there. And once you've established that, it's like we can start opening up left-handed. We're doing a touch of it now, but I've been very weary. I don't want to do too much to where it affects his right-handed. Some of the stuff we've done left-handed is more approach-driven versus mechanically driven. So I do think, we can touch some of it. But again, if you look at, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but 80% of pitchers are right-handed, 20% are left-handed. So how much are you really going to worry about his 20% of the bats versus the 80% of the bats?
Yeah, I mean, we've had that conversation with Brandon Marsh for years, right? Kyle Schwarber at one time. They said he couldn't hit lefties, and as his career has developed, no one's better against lefties from the left side. So definitely makes some sense there. Arun Escobar, really fast out of the gate in Clearwater. Looked like maybe he hit a wall in the second half, which is reasonable. It was his first full season. He also won't be 21, I don't think, until early next year. What's the ceiling for him at the plate, and is second base still kind of the position that you like to look at for him?
Yeah, quick Arun Escobar story. We were talking to the guys we had a little post-exit meeting today, and I guess he played golf for the first time today. He was up for one of the worst golfers we had, and I was kind of we were messing with him about it in front of everybody today, and I'm like, I got done. I was like, hey, come here for a second. I'm like, I don't really care that you're bad at golf. I believe if you tried to be good at golf, you would be. Because the last thing I want is a really good right-handed hitter with a good swing to spend too much time golfing in the offseason where it messes his baseball swing. But he's a great kid. He can really, really hit. I do think he hit a touch of a wall. It's the most games by far he's ever played. I think from like a skill standpoint, look at what he did in high A and double A the short time he was there. All the under the hood stuff looks good. I think at the end of the day, like he's prepared, he's ready to go. Again, whether he starts in high A, double A, we'll see. But he's very talented. Second base, third base. I do think like last year was like, hey, let's have him learn how to play second base. This year, I think we'll maybe do a little bit more third base, second base, like mix and match to try to see a little bit more. I know Adam Everett, our infield coordinator, was pretty convicted. Let's keep him at one spot for the entire year, which I was good with. I would like to probably see him a little bit more at third base to see what that looks like. But I think he's a very talented kid who can hit. He's really you look up, and I will spend time in the draft still with Barber in the group. So you look at a 21-year-old kid that would be a college junior, and it's like if he was one of these SEC schools, how well he performed, where he'd go in the draft. It's you get even more excited about the player that we have.
And I'll also ask you, since you mentioned the draft, I'll ask you about Gage Wood. I'm sure you were part of the scouting process there. As you said, I know you work on that end of it as well. And what was your first impression of being around him once he got to Clearwater? And is the plan to still keep him stretched out as a starter, or is there a temptation to say, wow, big fastball, great curveball, let's see how that looks in a shorter burst?
Yeah, you're a starter. I think we see him as a starter. I think like if the reliever stuff is down the road, that's we'll see how that goes down the road. First impression was very, very competitive. like wants to be good, tough on himself. You could tell like he has very high expectations and high standards for himself, which was good to see. Anytime you see a guy that not just wants to be good, wants to be great, is obviously like what you want to see. But I got to know him a little bit more around the camp, and he's very competitive. He's on the other end of the golfers. He's towards the top 3 right now. So I was trying to get to the bottom of that. But I think he's one of those guys where anything he does, he's competitive. He's physical. He's strong. And it's like one thing I've noticed from seeing him is like I'm impressed with his mobility, with how strong he is. He's very limber, and it's a special combination of strength and mobility that not a lot of guys have. And like you said, a tremendous fastball, and really looking forward to seeing him in his first full year.
Yeah, I loved his answer when we asked him about the no-hitter in the College World Series and the walk that cost him a perfect game. And he said, "Oh, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still really upset at myself for that." And, like this was a month later or so, and it's still eating at him. So you could tell that he's super competitive, and it'll be exciting to see him and to see how he moves through the system and what you've got on your hands there. I wonder if we could wrap it up this way. I always love asking you, we always talk about Justin and, Crawford and Painter and Miller and some of the others who I've just asked you about. Is there a player in the system who, I call it the prospect industrial complex, really isn't talking about that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I'll hit on 2 guys. From the draft. I think one of our guys we sent out early, Matthew Ferrara, shortstop, second base from New Jersey, high school kid. I think he was 18 years old. Was one of the youngest kids in the Florida State League. I think organizationally we were much more aggressive in giving guys their, like when they sign to go out to low A. A lot of teams don't do that, especially with high school hitters. We love to do it, actually, because it gives us more information on what the offseason looks like. It gives the player a taste. I think it's really good for them and for us. He got beat up a little bit when he was there. We didn't do a whole lot with him. Made a couple adjustments towards the end in the playoff games. He made some very quick adjustments. He's one of those guys where when you spend a little bit of time with him, the aptitude to make adjustments is very, very good. He's already put on 15 pounds. He can run. He's strong. I think like he's going to pop on a lot of models next year for organizations on some of these lists. I think he's going to start popping in. And then the pitcher, James Talon, he from Duke, a left-handed pitcher. I'm excited about a lot of our draft pitchers. He's one that just comes to mind as a little, I think he's 6th rounder somewhere in there, a little bit later with a really good fastball. But we have a lot of exciting players in the draft we're looking forward to seeing. We got to see, a couple of them when they pitched out there for Clearwater. But again, looking forward to that, seeing that class. Those are 2 names, Talon and Matthew Ferrara would be the 2 to like, hey, let's see what they do this year. That's
great. I mean, you talk about the draft. It was a ton of arms in this draft for you guys. So if you're mentioning James, then certainly he's at the top of the class if he stands out from that group. So it'll be exciting to see them develop as the year goes on. Luke, this was great as always. I know things don't really slow down in player development. You go right from the season into high performance camp in the fall and Arizona Fall League and everything else. You're going to get a few weeks now, I hope, to maybe catch your breath a little bit before everybody starts showing up again in January, right, for to ramp up for spring training. So I hope you can catch your breath over the next month or so and have a great Thanksgiving and great holidays if we don't talk. Thank you again for, like I said, being such a great friend of the show. And I can't thank you enough for taking time to be back with us at Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for all you guys do, and happy Thanksgiving and holidays to you guys as well.
I want to thank Luke Murton again for joining me. It's time now to open the reporter's notebook. When I saw the Orioles and Angels announce a 1-for-1 trade of 2 veteran players on the night of November 18th, I thought about something Dave Dombrowski said during a break in the GM meetings the week before. Dombrowski was recounting a conversation with an executive from another team. Quote, "We have a need for an outfielder," the executive told Dombrowski, "and we don't know where we're going to find him." Dombrowski told this story to illustrate a point. The outfield markets, both in free agency and trades, are pretty much a wasteland. I think that explains why the Orioles traded Grayson Rodriguez, a 26-year-old pitcher with 4 years of club control, to the Angels for Taylor Ward, a 32-year-old outfielder who has 1 year to go before free agency. Because even though Ward hit 36 homers this year and has the second most homers among righty-hitting outfielders in the last 2 years, trailing only back-to-back AL MVP Aaron Judge, a controllable starting pitcher who started Game 2 of a playoff series 2 years ago seems like a high price to pay, even if that pitcher has had difficulty staying healthy. When the offseason started, I talked to a few people who thought the Angels and Phillies might match up on a trade for Ward. The Phillies are looking for a righty-hitting outfielder with power to help protect Bryce Harper. The Angels need a third baseman. The Phillies have Alec Boehm, who, like Ward, is going into his walk year. Ward is due to make about $13.7 million in 2026, according to the arbitration projections at MLB Trade Rumors. Boehm's salary is pegged at $10.3 million. Needless to say, Rodriguez represents a bigger return for the Angels than Boehm would have. Now, the Ward for Rodriguez swap would seem to bode well for the Phillies' efforts to unload Nick Castellanos. It still doesn't mean they're going to expect to get much in return. According to Fangraphs wins above replacement, Castellanos ranked 145th among 145 players who qualified for the batting title this year. And he will make $20 million next year. If the Angels can get access to 4 years of a starter with Rodriguez's upside for an outfielder in his walk year, the Phillies should get, well, something for Castellanos instead of just releasing him, especially if they pay down, say, $16 million or $18 million of his salary. The Guardians, for instance, hope to contend next year and have an outfield that ranked just 29th in slugging. The Pirates, who reportedly tried to sign Josh Naylor before he returned to the Mariners and are interested in Kyle Schwarber, more on that later, were 26th in outfield slugging. The Royals were 28th in outfield slugging and 27th in DH slugging. You're telling me that any of those teams wouldn't take Castellanos for basically nothing and give up, say, a C-level prospect? But moving on from Castellanos, which the Phillies are determined to do, will leave them with an opening in the outfield. Justin Crawford is going to occupy either center field or left. Brandon Marsh will be in another spot. If the Phillies succeed in re-signing Kyle Schwarber, it probably takes them out of the bidding for Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger, the top free agent outfielders. And Ward, one of the best available outfielders on the trade market, is now off the board too. So when Dombrowski retold that story about a rival executive wondering where he was going to find outfield help, he might as well have been singing the same tune himself. Okay, two other quick notes. I thought it was a good week to be Harrison Bader. When Trent Grisham accepted the $22.025 million qualifying offer last week to return to the Yankees next season, it left Bader as the best free agent center fielder. I guess you could count Bellinger as a center fielder, although he probably profiles best in a corner. And some people say first base is his best position. Anyway, I can't help thinking that with Grisham off the market, Bader's chances at getting a multi-year deal at decent money, $12 million per year, maybe more, probably increased. Now, I'm not sure that's a place I'd want to go for a player who just had his best season at the plate since at least 2021 and maybe ever, but I think it's probably what the market will bear, especially considering Bader bats right-handed, plays great defense, and is coming off a big year with the Twins and Phillies. And finally, ESPN's Jeff Passan noted this week that the Pirates, yes, the Pirates, are looking to make a splash by signing a big hitter to help support Paul Skeens and the rest of their young, promising starting rotation. And while I admire and, hey, I even applaud the Pirates for finally trying to capitalize on their window with Skeens, I'd put their odds of landing Schwarber like in the single digits. Schwarber has made the playoffs in 10 of 11 Major League seasons. He's a serial winner. The Pirates need more than just Schwarber to reach the postseason. So unless they make an absolutely crazy offer, I'm talking like 6 years and like $180 million, something that is not a very Pirates thing to do, I can't imagine Schwarber winding up in Pittsburgh. None other than Joe Madden, Schwarber's former manager in Chicago, said last week on our show, quote, "I still think Schwarbs is grounded enough that he's going to go where he wants to go as opposed to being swayed by a couple extra dollars." So good for the Pirates, but I just don't see it happening. Okay, it's time now for Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. Want to join the conversation? It's easy. Just drop me an email at slauber@inquirer.com or reach out on the social media platform of your choice. X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or you can always drop me a line in the comments section on YouTube as well. This week's question comes from Jay Saquella, J-S-A-Q-U-E-L-L-A on Blue Sky, who asks, what trade value do the bullpen left-handers have? If the Phillies do decide to move Jose Alvarado, Matt Strahm, or Tanner Banks, is it more likely they trade one of them to address the MLB roster or to try to replenish the system and free up cash for use on the free agent market? Well, it's a great question. Thanks very much for that. So the Phillies have 3 lefties in their bullpen, which could certainly be viewed as a surplus. And as we noted earlier in the show, they've traded at least 2, maybe 3, depending on which rankings you're looking at, top 100 prospects in the last calendar year to get Jesus Luzardo and Joan Duran. Good trades, mind you, based on the initial returns. But if you trade enough Starlin Cabas, Eduardo Taitz, and Mick Abels, your farm system is going to start to feel it. So, yeah, the Phillies would rather not dip into the system any more than they already have. If I had to rank them in order of most to least likely to be traded, I'd go Strahm, Alvarado, then Banks. Over the last 3 years, 195 pitchers have worked at least 100 innings out of the bullpen. Strahm ranks 10th with a 2.46 ERA. The only lefty with a lower ERA is free agent Danny Colon at 2.41. So yes, Strahm has been extremely, extremely consistent. But his swing and miss rate has gone from 28% in 2023 to 26.7% in 24 and 23.8% this year. And as the Phillies seek to improve the bullpen, one way to get better would be to add more swing and miss. Now, to answer your question, as good as Strahm has been, I think it's more likely the Phillies would flip him for a prospect or two than reinvest his $7.5 million salary to address another area of the roster, notably righty hitting power in the outfield or maybe at third base. Even without Strahm, the bullpen would include Duran, Alvarado, Banks, and Orion Kerkering. They would have more work to do, but that's not a bad place to start. Thanks again, Jay Saquella on Blue Sky for the question. And we'll leave it there this week and tell you that all past episodes of Phillies Extra are available by going to Inquirer.com and clicking on the Inquirer Live tab or on the Inquirer's YouTube and Facebook pages. That's an easy way to catch up on any shows that you've missed. You can also listen to this episode and most others on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, please give us a follow and rate and review us. Thanks again to my guest this week, Luke Murton. And thanks as always to our producer, Mariam Akraz, for helping us piece all this together. Most of all, thanks so much to you out there for listening, watching, and of course for reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you next time.